A few years ago, much of the NCIS workforce went through training designed to help our personnel develop an outward mindset, focusing on others rather than looking inward toward ourselves. One module of that training included discussion of the 5 pillars of focus used by Navy SEALs. One takeaway from that discussion is to rather than focus on the size of the task, focus on the immediate. What do you have to do right now rather than letting your mind wander toward the horizon and all the hard things still to come? Another way of saying this is, if you ignore the urgent, it will harm you today. If you ignore the important, it will harm you tomorrow. Let me say that again. If you ignore the urgent, it will harm you today. If you ignore the important, it will harm you tomorrow. Is cybersecurity urgent or important? I think many of us would agree that it's actually both urgent and important. But there is less agreement on how we should address issues affecting the future. Therefore, I want to offer you some insights today about how the U.S. government, the Department of Defense, the Department of the Navy, and NCIS are approaching the problem, to see if the same approach might work for you. All right. So the first slide was going to be the Eisenhower Matrix, but there's a time management tool you might have heard about called the Eisenhower Matrix. It was created by Dwight D. Eisenhower. He was a key U.S. Army general and Allied commander during World War II. Then he became Supreme Allied Commander of NATO and was U.S. President from 1953 to 1961. His decision matrix, which you would have seen on the screen, but I kind of blew it. Just a square divided into 4 boxes, helps us rate urgency versus importance and determine how to proceed once we've categorized the task before us. We can see what's in play, which helps us analyze and realize that something on our to-do list might be urgent but not important, or important but not urgent, and so on. We can decide to do, delete, or delegate the tasks on our list. Educator, businessman, author, and keynote speaker Stephen Covey also taught about urgent versus important for decades. Perhaps you've read his most popular book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and if so, you're probably familiar with the concept of urgent and important. I ask again, is cybersecurity urgent or important? If it is indeed both, then how do we action our data protection objectives? The book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, says there are 2 principal things a leader can influence when it comes to producing results: your strategy and your ability to execute that strategy. The book explains that the enemy of execution is the whirlwind, also known as our day jobs. The whirlwind is that massive amount of energy necessary to keep operations going on a day-to-day basis. The whirlwind is what makes it so hard for us to execute anything new. It's what causes us to sometimes wonder at day's end, what did I exactly accomplish today? Hopefully you don't feel that way at the end of today. But the whirlwind is urgent and our goals are important. But when urgency and importance clash, urgency wins every time. In terms of cybersecurity, are you spending more time on urgent or important? One last passage from the book. One CEO is quoted as saying, for his organization, the whirlwind is not like dragons, it's more like gnats. I'm not even sure you have gnats in Ireland. I honestly don't know. But they're a real problem in the United States in the summertime. I know you don't have snakes though, right? Due to St. Patrick. But anyway, gnats are little tiny flies that invariably show up when you're trying to have a picnic. They swarm around your face, they try to get into your eyes, and instead of enjoying the picnic, you end up swatting at it the whole time and saying some pretty colorful words. In business and cybersecurity, we can spend so much time swatting at gnats that when we look back over the last 6 months, we see that we haven't accomplished many of the important steps we intended to take to make our data more secure. Crypto scams, threats to 2-part authentication, man-on-the-side attacks, phishing, smishing, and vishing are all significant issues for our private organizations, businesses, and governments. I would suggest that these can be urgent, but I believe other issues are more important. One emerging concern is that criminals and our adversaries can use AI generators and deep fakes maliciously and mislead our populations and undermine our personal, financial, and social well-being and harm democracies and the companies those democracies support. Threats to the cyber supply chain due to fraud, criminal subversion, or nation-state activities, if not addressed, will eventually undermine our ability to operate in cyberspace personally, professionally, or militarily. Solving these bigger, more important challenges will require more than changing passwords more often or not opening certain text messages, although these steps should also be paid attention to. Make sure you're doing that. These significant issues are more than a nuisance. They can have devastating consequences. While your personal security is at risk from all kinds of scams, so is the national security of Ireland, the United States, and every other country, every minute of every day. And the consequences of large-scale cybercrime could be catastrophic. My name is Chris McMahon. I'm the Deputy Director of Operations for the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, headquartered at Quantico, Virginia. McMahon, a fine Irish name, or I was told last night it was McMahon, but what can I do? I'm told my ancestors hail from Limerick, but given the number of McMahons in Ennis and County Clare, I feel certain I have roots there as well. Every time I return to Ireland, I find it difficult to understand why anyone would want to leave this amazing place. But I recognize times were different then. People were not worried about cybersecurity. What was urgent and important to them was survival. My time with you today is short. If my comments prompt questions in your mind, I encourage you to remember them, and after the session, find me and my colleague, Lukik Suthar, the head of the NCIS Cyber Directorate, who is here with me today. We'll meet you in the hallway after the session. Where are you, Lukik? Oh, there he is. I'm lucky to have him on my team. Perhaps some of you in the audience were here last year when Lukik presented his EVA concept. Anyone? Bueller? Awesome. If the 80s and 90s movie and TV references kind of get old, you can tell me that after the session too. I am always willing to learn, grow, and evolve. As NCIS Deputy Director of Operations, I oversee and strategically guide all operational activities, to include those in cyberspace. Before becoming Deputy Director, I led the NCIS National Security Directorate, which, as its name implies, focuses on crimes that could affect national security. Have you seen the NCIS TV show? I work for the real NCIS. We're kind of a little bit like the TV show, but most of us are not as put together as the characters on the shows, or as famous, or nearly as well paid. That is not to say that we don't have some real characters in our organization. We do. And I would love to tell you that my life has been as exciting as any one of the seasons of this show, or any of the 4 shows. But it is definitely not, it's had its moments, but it's definitely not been that dramatic. Thank goodness. While the show's portrayal of our day-to-day activities is not completely accurate, the excellent actors who portray my team do capture their intensity, focus, and professionalism. My NCIS team is approximately 2,000 people strong. We operate from 190 locations in more than 40 countries. NCIS is a small agency with a big mission. The NCIS mission goals are to prevent terrorism, protect secrets and key technologies, and to reduce crime, on land, at sea, and in cyberspace. We protect and preserve the superiority of the Navy and Marine Corps, wherever they may be, to enable them to deter aggression and, if pressed, to win the next fight. In terms of cybersecurity, what's our solution? What do we need to focus on to create the right strategy? And how should we execute those strategies? How does NCIS reduce the threat of having our data compromised and help protect the data of our government and industrial-based partners? What the U.S. Navy and NCIS have decided to do, and what I would offer to you as a solution to dealing with your swarms of distractions, is to change mindsets. Simply put, we have moved from a compliance mindset and have adopted a readiness mindset. Policies and paperwork and checklists will only take us so far. Yes, we want to tick the boxes and ensure that we've done the basics, but that's just the beginning. The U.S. Department of Defense has enacted a number of directives that are driving our workforce and our policymakers towards this readiness mindset. I believe the Secretary of the Navy, Carlos del Toro, sums up this shift to a readiness mindset best in a recent directive, noting that for too long, the cybersecurity posture of the Department of the Navy has been based on a compliance approach that depends on checklists and policies to secure our technology. We have ample evidence over the last 15 plus years that this approach is ineffective and cumbersome. Better cybersecurity is not achieved solely through compliance, and compliance-based approaches are insufficient to secure the Department of the Navy. In support of the Department of the Navy's information superiority vision, the Department of the Navy will transform its approach to cybersecurity by pivoting from a compliance mindset to a dynamic model rooted in the philosophy of readiness. Now, I don't know if you've ever been punched in the face. I have been, probably more times than I would actually like to admit. So take it from me. When you get punched in the face, it feels pretty urgent. This is what's happening to us in terms of cybersecurity. It's not gnats that we're dealing with. We're getting punched in the nose every single moment of every single day. Traditionally, most of us have thought of security from a compliance mindset or a defensive mindset. We have put in the boxing headgear and felt protected. In both government and private sector, we've developed policies and procedures based on the threats we knew existed. Focusing on complying with these policies and procedures lands us on the hamster wheel of busyness, running as hard as we can but never really getting anywhere. We're so busy filling out TPS reports in triplicate that we never accomplish anything of significance. What we should be doing is consistently be on alert for emerging threats and determining how to address those quickly and effectively. We've all been acting like time is on our side. Time is not on our side. That's the urgency of cybersecurity. New threats are appearing with alarming frequency practically every day. If we continue to try and defend everything, we end up overlooking specific vulnerabilities in our system. We need to start by assessing the threats effectively, to prioritize what most needs defending. We need to learn how to speak the same language, use the same cybersecurity lexicon to ensure we're speaking with precision. Irish and English are similar, but not identical. Certain words, phrases have different meanings, like football and pitch. We can probably figure out from the context of our conversations what each other mean. But are we talking American football or European football? And to make it more confusing in the US, pitch usually has to do with a completely different sport, baseball. And that is if we are using the same basic language. To take the analogy one step further, if you're speaking perfect Gaelic, but I don't have a clue what you're saying, which is 100% true, I have no idea what you're saying, our conversations about cybersecurity are going to be much more difficult and the likelihood of misunderstanding much higher. Perhaps you are asking yourself, is the Deputy Director of the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, a criminal investigative organization, really telling us that compliance is not necessary? That we should break away from policies and procedures to address cybersecurity? No, I am not. I believe the compliance mindset in any type of security setting is helpful and that it assures a baseline has been provided, but compliance alone is not enough. In order to build readiness and address the important issues, we, NCIS, have focused our team and our people on 4 operational tenets: encouraging curiosity, making intuitive decisions, building trust-based teams, and communicating professionally and effectively. We must encourage curiosity. That means training your workforce on how to find answers and the best information available. We must make intuitive decisions. Being indecisive, making no decision, can cause great harm. Using the best information available, our training, and our experience, we must make the call to act. We must build teams and trust each other. That concept is pretty self-explanatory, but as we all know, it can be easier said than done. We must work together, government and industry, to proactively defend against these cybersecurity threats. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we must communicate professionally and effectively. If there's one issue I've seen throughout my career cause great risk to the mission and team, it would be ineffective communication or just no communication at all. These tenets are not particularly technical. Security is not only about ones and zeros. It's about people. The bad actors are people. The victims are people. The solution is people like you who understand the urgency and importance of cybersecurity. You are the best tool in the cybersecurity toolbox. At NCIS, we're using the 4 tenets as tools to turn our workforce into master craftspersons. With all this in mind, we need to look beyond the cyber and cybersecurity to better incorporate the people, physical, and business-related issues affecting our cybersecurity posture. We must be ready for the punch we know is coming, much as the boxer on the screen here is poised to defend and respond. We cannot operate and defend our networks at the baseline any more than you can play a game of football, what Americans call soccer, staying on the sideline. Our mobile work-from-anywhere world has exponentially increased the threat of our data being compromised. We must stay vigilant and create cultures that foster creativity as our teams seek solutions. We need to compare and contrast known and potential threat vectors with key intellectual property and important data to prioritize protection. We must recognize that a defensive security posture will not fully address emerging threats. We must do constant and consistent self-red teaming, emulating a potential enemy's attack or exploitation capabilities to test our digital fence lines. Then communicate findings and lessons learned quickly and broadly to more holistically address the created vulnerabilities. We must be more proactive. To anticipate threat vectors, we must connect and collaborate with our private sector and government partners to share the threats and efforts to stop them more quickly. That is one of the key values of Zero Day Con, connection. It facilitates government entities like NCIS and representatives here from other government agencies from various nations in the sharing of lessons learned with private sector entities. So how do we accomplish these things? The first step is to build relationships. Perhaps you read in an article in the Business Post this past Sunday in which my colleague, Lukik Suthar, was talking about the criticality of building relationships left of boom, as the Marines say, meaning left of or before a critical incident like a data breach occurs. We must build those relationships now, because when a crisis hits, we can surge resources, but it's impossible to surge undeveloped relationships. So, today, my challenge for you all, my call to action is this. Enable the more proactive readiness mindset in your organizations by encouraging curiosity, supporting quick, intuitive decision-making, building trust-based teams within your organization and with your private industry and government partners, and encouraging and supporting professional, effective communication with these trusted partners. If we connect and work together, we will maintain the ability to defend against the daily urgent while preparing for the strategically important. I want to thank Zero Day Con for inviting Lukik and I to be here with you. And I thank you for your attention. It's an honor for us to represent the awesome people of NCIS here today. Cybersecurity requires a team approach, and Lukik and I and NCIS are honored to be part of your team. I look forward to connecting with and building lasting relationships with you, the people responsible for carrying out this important mission. In the book I mentioned earlier, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, discipline number 4 is create a cadence of accountability. That is to say, unless we consistently hold one another accountable, our goal of better data protection will disintegrate into the whirlwind. Stephen Covey said, you have to decide what you want your highest priority to be. Have the courage, pleasantly, smiling, unapologetically, to say no to other things. And the way to do that is to have a bigger yes burning inside. I now encourage you to make moving to a readiness mindset a burning, passionate yes. Again, as I mentioned earlier, if you have questions, Lukik and I will see you in the hallway after we conclude here. And just let me clarify, despite all the boxing imagery and me being in the red corner and Lukik being in the blue corner, we're not calling you out, as we say in the United States, to fight in the hallway over disagreements or conversations. We're just going to be out there to answer questions. And I'm just saying we're going to be easy to find. And then I'll be back here this afternoon at 2:25 as part of a panel discussion called From Data to Critical Infrastructure, Improving Our Defense Against the Invisible Threat. So I hope to see you then. Thank you.